My Lord, spiritual and temporal, our seniors here present, our distinguished speakers, the members of the FIDA Lagos Executive Committee led by our amiable chairperson, all of our distinguished participants, we welcome you to the FIDA Lagos 2020 Law Week. We're really glad to have everyone join this virtual meeting. And we're pleased that despite the ongoing challenges with the pandemic, we're alive, we're healthy, we're hearty, and we're able to continue with our programs. We do not take this for granted that you're all here present today. A lot of us are already joined. We had over 100 people registering for this lecture. And as at now, we have over 50 people. So many people are joining. We recognize everyone and we welcome you very, very warmly to this lecture. We will be recognizing all of our distinguished panelists, our speakers, and our distinguished guests. But we have word that the First Lady of Lagos will be joining us. We've actually been trying to stall a bit to wait for her to join. And as soon as she joins, we're going to specially recognize her and welcome her to give a few remarks. But in view of the fact that we need to run, it's going to be a long day, we decided that we will start this program. So we wish to apologize to everyone who joined before 3 o'clock and those who have been waiting for us to start. That is the reason why we have stalled a bit. We heard that she'll be joining and we just felt that, it's just, courtesy for us to have her join so that we can start the program formally. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. The program is about to start now, and we would like to call on, okay, we will actually start with taking the second stanza of the national anthem as our opening prayers. Sorry for the break in transmission. We will start now. Oh. Thank you very much, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. That was actually the FIDA anthem, but it's all good. So that will be adopted as our opening prayers. Okay, so we'd like to specially recognize some distinguished guests before I call on the chairperson for her opening remarks. We'd like to specially recognize our CVP of FIDA Nigeria, Mrs. Rhoda Prevail Titan. I guess she's on the call. Ma'am, we'll be bringing you into to join the list of participants so that you can also have your remarks at that when we'll be calling you. We'd like to specially recognize our honorable justices here present. We have cited my Lord, Honorable Justice Jumoke Pedro, as well as Honorable Justice Sherifat Sholebo of the Ikeja High Court. We welcome you very, very specially, Ma. We'll also be recognizing our keynote speaker, Professor Joy Ngozi Ezelo, the Dean of Faculty of Laws, University of Nigeria, Nsukka. We welcome you very, very warmly. We have also a guest speaker, Dr. Taiwo Latif Sheikh of the Department of Psychiatry, Ahmadu Bello. We welcome you, sir. Our own guest speaker as well, our own sister, Mrs. Titilola Vivodi, the Coordinator Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Team is here with us. We welcome you. We have our spiritual fathers with us as well. Honorable Abdul-Hakim Abdul-Latif, the Chief Imam of Lagos State House of Assembly Mosques. We welcome you, sir. Our father in the Lord, Reverend Father Paul Akin Otiko, the chaplain of St. Thomas Catholic Church, University of Lagos. We are duly welcome, sir. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation to be guest speakers, to share your perspectives on the theme of today's lecture. The theme that has been advertised that we have been looking forward to hearing various perspectives is identifying the root causes of domestic violence and preferring practical solutions. Again, we welcome you warmly. We welcome everyone. We welcome all of our participants, our special guests, those who are joining in, those who are joining us from home as well as abroad. We welcome you. May I announce that I have a co-moderator with me today, Mrs. Abimbola Jack. She'll be joining us and will be coordinating the session as we proceed with this program. Thank you so much again for your patience. I'll now call on our chairperson, Mrs. Phil Ineji, for our opening remarks. Thank you. My chairperson, please.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. The First Lady of Lagos State, the wife of the Executive Governor of Lagos State, Her Excellency, Dr. Mrs. Claudiana Ibijoke Sanwo-Olu, my lords, eminent advocates, senior advocates of Nigeria, my amiable CVP, this CVP, our national officers present, seniors, distinguished colleagues, great FIDAns, ladies and gentlemen. I want to welcome you all warmly to this significant webinar on our Law Week, Lagos FIDA Law Week 2020. Our Law Week is usually very, very important to us. It's something we hold very high to our hearts. And the problem of COVID-19 pandemic, which has thrown the whole world into the most precarious situation, has been standing on the way. But because of how dearly it is to us, we decided to explore the new normal, which is to hold it virtually. So I want to appreciate you in a very special way for being in attendance with respect to this our Law Week. I also want to specially appreciate our speakers. We are very grateful for making us time out of your time schedule to be with us. We are very grateful. Our topic for today is quite apt and timely in these present ugly happenings in our country. Domestic violence is a global phenomenon. With the COVID-19 pandemic, we have all observed and experienced a horrifying increase with respect to domestic violence. And today, we'll be looking at the root causes, identifying the causes. We are very, very aware of the fact that we have relevant laws on ground. Looking at our 1999 Constitution, under the Chapter 4, the provision is very clear. It does not allow or welcome any form of violence, because under that chapter, the provision provides for human rights. So it does not welcome any form of violation of human rights. And then, looking at the relevant laws we have on ground, we have the VAP Act. Lagos State, that we all know is a gravitational center of excellence, has always been proactively responsive to issues of laws. It also has domestic violence law of 2007. All these laws, with also our Child Rights Act, which we know that most states have also been able to adopt, though we also still have some states that have not adopted the Child Rights Act. So with all these laws on ground, we are still having horrifying experience on the angle of domestic violence and other forms of violence. And FIDA, as an organization, has zero tolerance for violence, all forms of violence, and abhors it in all its ramifications. And that's why we are very happy with today's team, and we are sure that our discussants, our speakers, will be able to do justice to this topic, and also the subtopic enhanced to justice. So I want to welcome you all once more, and also appeal to you to listen with rapt attention and be focused to enjoy today's lecture. Thank you very much, and God bless you. I want to also now appreciate our CVP once more, Mrs. Rhoda Preval Theodon, if she's already with us. So please come and give us her goodwill message from our national body. Thank you very much. My CVP, please.
Thank you very much, my chairperson, Amiable Phil Nneji. I'm so delighted and happy to be on this program today. You have laid the protocol, but I want to acknowledge the First Lady and wife of the Governor of Lagos State. We're happy to have you here today. And then the lead speaker, who is our own dear sister and a member, and somebody who I have never gotten tired of listening to. When she speaks, you want her to continue. I remember I invited my two sisters to our regional congress, and they kept asking me, where is that professor? Yesterday, when I was in a program with her, I had to show them, I said, see her and hear her. So I'm sure hearing her today is not going to be any exception. I welcome you, Professor Joy Ngozi Izelo. We're happy to have you. And I'm so delighted too when I saw the list of erudite speakers. I've had to listen to quite a number of them, so I know it's not going to be different. But most especially for me today, I want to be so happy with Lagos, FIDA Lagos, for inviting our spiritual fathers to this meeting. In fact, it makes a lot of a difference because we just rose up from our next meeting where we resolved that we should partner with faith-based organizations. We should take our sensitization and advocacies to churches and mosques because they need to hear us on this. Just this afternoon, I got a post from Kaduna. I wept. I must confess I wept because when I saw it, it was too barbaric, and that was inflicted by a deaconess in a church in Kaduna. And I said to Kaduna chair, I say, you must get to the root of it. They've gotten her arrested, but I say you must go to the church and show them the pictures of this girl that she almost got killed, and she has confessed to it. So I want to say that I'm so happy that we have our spiritual parents here today, and to say that we are going to continue to partner with them. This topic, and before I say that, I want to also acknowledge the presence of our learned silks that are in the house today, our very senior members, and FIDA members that are all here. I say welcome to you, and it's going to be a beautiful one. I can see it. But I want to really identify with FIDA Lagos today. Despite the lockdown, despite all the problems on and off, you have been able to pull this together. You had a beautiful outing yesterday, and today you've been able to bring all these people together. I want to congratulate you because the topic cannot be overemphasized. We have been talking the talk and we'll continue to talk the talk until we walk the talk. And because of the talking the talk, we have seen that so many steps have been taken of recent. Very proactive steps have been taken by states. We have had states of declare. It is going to take the kind of people that you have here today. We are going to really have practical solutions to curbing domestic violence. I don't want to bore you with a long speech, and I wish all of us much.
Thank you, my CVP. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you so much, CVP. We appreciate you. We always draw confidence from your presence anytime we see you at any of our programs. Thank you also, my chairperson. We are trying to bring on our guest speaker, but we've not been able to identify her from the participants list. Prof, if you're here, please can you signify by raising your hand so that we can bring you onto the panelist table. Prof Ngozi Ezelo, if you're here, kindly raise your hand, please. My chairperson, I don't know, are you able to chat her or please and just find out where she is?
Okay. We can go on with Bible while we are waiting for her anyway.
Please say that again. We should
We
call
can go
who?
on with Lola while we are waiting for her.
Okay. All right. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce one of our guest speakers, Mrs. Titilola Vivo Adeni, Merchant of Hope, is a legal practitioner and a public administrator with over 10 years in public service. And she has served in different capacity within Lagos state government during this period. She has been instrumental in ensuring a coordinated response to sexual and gender-based violence in Lagos state. She currently serves as the pioneer coordinator of the Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Team, and she's been occupying that position for a couple of years now. Our honorable justices are distinguished learned seniors in the House, distinguished guest speakers and participants. It gives us great pleasure to bring on board this afternoon Mrs. Titilola Bivo Adeniyi for her presentation. She's trying to connect. Ma?
We can also call the chairperson for our Law Week committee for objective of the Law Week.
Oh, yes. I beg your pardon. I'm so sorry. Mrs. Titilola, while we're just waiting for you to connect properly, can I call on the chairperson of the 2020 Law Week and for her brief remarks? The people, our chairperson has led a distinguished team of members of the committee who have helped us to put this together. So it would be nice to appreciate her. I wish it is the point where we can clap as we bring her on board. Mrs. Amdat Aramide Keshinro, please, ma, we want you to give your brief remarks now. Are you here, ma? I think she dropped off at some point because I saw her earlier.
She's in. She's in. It might be network.
Okay, I can see her now. Auntie, are you there, ma? Mrs. Keshiro, please, ma, can you unmute yourself? You have the mic now, the virtual mic.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Good afternoon,
Yes,
everyone.
Good afternoon.
The First Lady of Lagos State, the Chief Judge of Lagos State Judiciary, my amiable Chairperson FIDA Lagos branch, our CVP, Leonard Silk, justices in our midst, our spiritual fathers. Permit me to stand on the remaining existing protocol to save our time. I'm so delighted being in our midst this afternoon. The main objective of today's topic is to protect, to preserve the rights and interests, the well-being of the indigenous people in Lagos State. As we all know, like we said, the chairperson said, FIDA have zero tolerance against violence, be it women or children. The essence of today's topic is for us to really dig into the roots, causes of this domestic violence that have been so rampant and ravaging our society today. It has no limit, even against babies. It's so pathetic. And we felt it is not normal in the society. We should be able to go to the roots and find out the causes. And if we are talking of intellectual, we have intelligence and intellectual people in our midst to really educate us on what can be the causes of domestic violence and how can we reduce and eradicate it to the barest minimum. I am so happy that our spiritual fathers were able to create time for us to be able to educate us from the religious aspects, from both the Quran and the Bible, for human beings to know what God is saying about these barbaric acts. I really appreciate everyone, the panelists, and at the end of this lecture, I am sure we'll be able to identify and learn more on how to avoid domestic violence in our homes, in our society at large. Our religious fathers too, by the time they finish with us here, I'm sure churches and help us to preach and eradicate these acts. I thank you all for joining and participating. Thank you and God bless you all.
Thank you so much, Chairperson of 2020 FIDA Lagos Law Week. Thank you for those brief remarks. Very, very instructive. You know, just giving us some ideas on why we are seated here today to talk about this issue that has become really, really urgent and seeking for very, very quick actions. I understand that our distinguished keynote speaker has joined us. Prof. Ngozi Ezelo, are you here, ma? Okay, I think she's just at the point of joining, so we will move quickly. As soon as she comes in, we will come back to her. At this juncture, let's take Mrs. Titilola Adeni Vival for our own presentation. Mrs. Titilola Vival Adeni, are you here?
Yes.
All right. Mrs. Bible Adeni, are you here? We can see you. You can please start your presentation now. I think she might be experiencing some technical issues. You know, with this our business unusual way of working now, you don't know what to expect. So sorry about that. I think we'll just go ahead to call one of our distinguished speakers as well. That is Dr. Taiwo Sheikh. While we're waiting.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
It's a pleasure being on this platform in the midst of very respectable, honorable members of the society. I want to crave the indulgence to stand on the existing protocol while especially recognizing the First Lady of Lagos State. Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
If you can permit me to share the one I have, because I've made slight modification. If you permit me, I can share the slide I have.
Okay, sir. You may please go ahead. We've withdrawn the presentation for yours.
You have to give me the permission, put me as a co-host host. If you make me a co-host, presently it's disabled, I can't share. If you make me a co-host, then I can share.
Yes, sir. You've just been made a co-host.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Fine. So I'm here. Can you see it now? Can you see my slide?
Yes, sir. We can see it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Do you want to put it on slideshow?
Well, I will keep changing it.
Just click on the slide
changing?
mode. It's changing, but you can put it on the slideshow.
But since I'm controlling it, I can keep changing it.
Yeah, just put it on slideshow. If you look up on your screen, you see slideshow.
Okay,
slideshow,
right.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm really delighted to be here. I'm a psychiatrist at Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, and I'm also the president of Association of Psychiatrists in Nigeria. By my profession, I deal a lot with people who have psychological issues arising from domestic violence and especially issues of rape. So I have a few slides to share with you, and then I will leave the remaining discussions for the panelists. So essentially, what are we talking about? Domestic violence. For us in the medical field, we see domestic violence or family, some people call it family violence, others call it domestic abuse, some may even call it intimate partner violence, IPV. It's violence or other abuse in domestic settings, which could be within marriage or cohabitation relationship, which could be in form of abusive or intimidating behavior. It could also be emotional, sexual, it could be social or financial, it could be spiritual or physical. Specifically, forms of violence include assault, either physical with hand or with weapon, pushing, shoving, slapping, while types of psychological assaults could include threats of harm, intimidation, humiliation, false accusations, and so on. Domestic violence also includes partner stalking and non-consensual and painful sexual acts. So who is responsible for domestic violence? Domestic violence is committed by a spouse or partner within any of the relationships listed previously. Any of the spouse may be the aggressor, but globally, the victims of domestic violence are overwhelmingly the female gender, and they also tend to experience more severe forms of the violence. In this part of the world, the story is just about the same, if not worse, than what is described internationally. I'm sure some people will have the statistics of domestic violence as it relates to Nigeria and West Africa. What can we hazard as causes of domestic violence in Nigeria? We could simply divide them into three major headings. The factors include the individuals, it could also be social factors, and it could be environmental factors. Individual factors, the first thing we look at the genetics. You know, nobody drops from the sky. We are all products of our parents, and we do inherit whatever we have, including our behavior. So sometimes you may even inherit behaviors that could make you very difficult to deal with, a very irritable person or aggressive person, someone that will not be able to discuss and negotiate things. Rather, you will just spill it into fight and violent interaction. It could also be psychological. People could be suffering from psychological disorders, illnesses. It could be personality disorder. We do have people who are described as being psychopaths. We have people who have sociopathic personality. We have people who have antisocial personalities. For reasons of time, I cannot break all these things down. But these are personality disorders that could actually lead to domestic violence when you live with such people. They are generally unremorseful. They don't accept their wrongdoing, and they keep claiming to be right. And there are illnesses, clear-cut mental illnesses that could lead to domestic violence. You live with someone who has very severe mental illness, who is deluded or is hallucinated and will be giving wrong interpretation of your moves and even things that you say. All this could also result in very violent domestic relationship. Substance abuse, people who indulge in drugs, alcoholics are also known to be very much involved in domestic violence. And to some extent, people who are handicapped, people who are crippled, sometimes they're on the defensive. They feel that they are not safe, they are not secured, and they may react violently to certain even harmless moves. Then there are social factors. Social factors include circumstances within relationship. How did this relationship start? You can imagine a family where the woman got pregnant and came into the relationship just because of the pregnancy, not because the man really loves her. Any little mistake, any little issue will result into violence and things like that. There are issues of finances. Breadwinners are not able to put food on the table. They have financial difficulties. And there are environmental factors. This is very important, especially here where we have other members of the society present. Societal tolerance of such things, which is determined by societal culture, the cultural norms of the society that places the man, the role of the man as being the head. Not only that, that's being the one who checks the behavior of other members of the family. There are issues where things will happen and they'll be asking the man whether he has beaten the woman or not. If he beat her into her senses, she'll know how to behave in the house and things like that. We have to also look into the religion. What are the things that are in the religion that will actually ground domestic violence? And then the roles within the home and changing roles that we do see, especially those who even find themselves abroad and they find some freedom. The woman finds some freedom in her relationship with the man and she may take it the other way around and the man may become violent. Now, in this season of COVID-19, let's look at domestic violence as regards to what is going on in COVID-19. During this current pandemic, over 25 organizations that support domestic violence victims were surveyed in the last week of March, and they have all reported an increase in the reports of domestic violence. Why is this so? It has also been reported in Asia and parts of Africa that there is upsurge of domestic violence amid COVID-19 lockdowns. Many countries around the world have imposed lockdowns to stop the spread of COVID-19. Lockdowns have proved effective measures for battling pandemic, but they have also exposed gendered inequalities and the threats to women across the world. Recently, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres remarked, over the past weeks, as the economic and social pressures and fear have grown, we have seen horrifying surge in domestic violence. And the number of women calling for support services during this period have increased. This was a remark by the UN Secretary General very recently. Now, still in the context of the COVID-19, especially the lockdown has created a very difficult and anxious period for everyone. Physical restriction, inadequate space, lack of recreational alternatives, boredom, unequal sharing of labor within the house. The woman finds herself alone doing everything, and when she complains, it's become a problem. Fear of inability to meet family responsibilities because you can't go out, you can't get money, you cannot put food on the table. Fear of job loss, fear of the future, including health, social, and financial consequences of COVID-19, could lead to increase in sensitivity and irritability, which could lead to aggression and lack or loss of usual tolerance that people are supposed to have. All these could precipitate domestic violence and can even worsen it where it existed in milder forms. Now, let's move on to rape and sexual assault within this context. Sexual violence is shockingly common in our society today. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in the United States, nearly 1 in 5 women in the US are raped or sexually assaulted at some point in their lives, often by someone they know and trust. In some Asian, African, and Middle East countries, that figure is even higher. And sexual assault isn't limited to women. Many men, boys, suffer rape and sexual trauma. Sexual assault is even more common in societies that are full of conflicts, where you have a lot of crime, armed robbery, kidnapping, and so on and so forth. The trauma of sexual assault, regardless of age or gender, the impact of sexual violence go far beyond any physical injuries. The trauma of being raped or sexually assaulted can be shattering, leaving you feeling scared, ashamed, and alone, or plagued by nightmares, flashbacks, and other unpleasant memories. The world does not feel like a safe place anymore. You no longer trust others. You don't even trust yourself. You may even question your own judgment, your self-worth, and even your sanity. You may blame yourself for what has happened or believe that you are dirty or damaged goods. Relationships feel very dangerous and intimacy becomes very, very impossible. There are certain myths and facts about rape and sexual assault, and people carry this all around, and I want the panelists to actually look into this and discuss it. Victim blaming myths about sexual violence, blaming themselves, I may be the cause of my problem. Or believing that I should have spotted the rapists because one is supposed to be able to recognize the rapists. How true is this? I don't think so. If you didn't fight back, you must have thought that it was your own fault. But we do know that so many things can happen during rape, and people, the victim can even lose her life. So there's a limit to how much you can fight back. In fact, many a times, the victim becomes frozen. You freeze. Your mind leaves your body. Your body remains like a carcass. And this happened during rape. So sometimes people blame themselves. That people are raped because they asked for it by the way they dress or act. This is not true. We cannot accept this. And of course, even if a woman walks naked on the streets, rape is about consent. You must seek the consent. And then there are people who misunderstand date raping and things like that. I will allow the panelists to go into in-depth and discuss this matter. Now, what are the physical and psychosocial consequences of domestic violence and rape? There are physical injuries, which is now increasingly fatal. We have seen people that are killed after being raped. We have seen husbands killing their wives as a result of domestic violence. We have seen wives killing husbands. We have seen mothers killing children and fathers killing children. So there are physical injuries that are now increasingly becoming fatal. There are mental consequences. Anxiety is the most common consequence of domestic violence and rape. Depression, suicide, suicidal ideation, post-traumatic stress disorders, and psychosis. Frank insanity can occur after domestic violence. There are also social and economic consequences. Domestic violence leads to dysfunctional family. It leads to divorces, leads to child abuse. It can lead to job loss because of absenteeism and so on. Now, I want to give you some scenarios. Something I quoted from the newspapers. The first one is, rape still dominates the news headlines, with conventional police recording hundreds of cases in different parts of the country. Even the Sharia police in Sokoto also has more than 100 rapes on their record. This was reported on 2nd of July 2020 by Daily Trust. Then there is this pathetic case that is really going on now. A mentally ill young lady was raped multiple times. She became pregnant and had the baby and killed the baby within her mental illness, within her delusions. Presently, she is in police custody awaiting to be arranged for murder. I want the panelists to look into this. How fair is it? How can we deal with matters like this? And here is another one. A girl is raped. She fell pregnant and an abortion was procured. She's been through 3 abortions already and the rapist is a clergy father. This was reported on the 8th of July 2020 by Daily Trust. So what do we do about this? I'll leave the rest to the panelists to discuss. I'm sure we have a lot of people who have a lot to discuss about this. I thank you very much for listening to me. Hello?
Hello, thank you so much, sir.
You're most welcome.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is the point where we miss physical meetings because we would have been able to just give you a resounding applause for such a great paper. Very succinct, but it was really, really loaded with a lot of points. Thank you so much, Dr. Taiwo Latif Sheikh. We really appreciate your joining us and for that great presentation. I will just attempt, just a small attempt to point out some of the key points from your presentation that you've just shared. Domestic violence victims are overwhelmingly women. And we can see that there's been, a lot of information globally about this, that there's no gainsaying that women are at the receiving end. They are the victims, overwhelmingly high in number. You've also spoken about the causes. They can be individual, social, and the environmental factors. And you took your time to take us through the various elements of these three categories of causes. An overview of domestic violence during this COVID-19, and the number of women calling for support services has increased globally. So there's been a large outcry because there is domestic violence everywhere. You've taken us through some of the factors: boredom, the fact that spouses are home and everyone is just getting agitated. People don't even know what to do. Means of livelihood has been affected. And in Yoruba parlance, we say everybody come kora. I don't know how to interpret that, but there's a lot of aggression and people are not just patient. And of course, there is those who get the bulk of this is your immediate family member. So spousal abuse and all sorts of things going on. You also painted the trauma of sexual assault. You took us through this from your medical side and some of the things we have been seeing in the newspaper. These things are real and they're really worrisome. And of course, the physical and the psychosocial consequences of domestic violence and what we are seeing around. So thank you so much. And of course, you left us with a poser to those who will be speaking right after now. So we have a lot to talk about as we bring on our other distinguished speakers. Thank you so much, Dr. Taiwo Lateef Sheikh. Really appreciate you. And we know that we have a lot of questions, comments from our distinguished participants that will be coming to you later. So please, sir, don't run away. We trust that you stay to the end of this program. Thank you so much.
You are most welcome. I'm still available.
All right, sir. Thank you. Now, before we call on our keynote speaker who just joined us, we would like to give a special recognition to one of our Board of Trustees members from FIDA, Nigeria. That is the person of Chief Tessa Ikimi. We appreciate your joining this webinar this afternoon, sir. Oh, madam, I'm sorry. Chief Tessa Ikimi is here with us, and we duly acknowledge your presence. We're grateful that you have joined us. Thank you so much. Right, finally, we were able to get hold of Prof. Prof, thank you for joining. We know you had a couple of issues joining us, but we're glad that you finally made it. Professor Joy Ngozi Ezelu, OON, is the Dean of Faculty of Law, University of Nigeria, Nsukka. She's also the former United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Trafficking, as well as the founder of WACO, TAMA, SARC. Prof will tell us what those acronyms mean because I don't have it. So, ma, we're so glad to have you. Please take your presentation, ma. Now, ma. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. I guess I may have to actually put up my video at some point to make sure I stay connected because I've been in a long meeting, part of admin responsibility, and my battery, I didn't get opportunity to get it recharged. But thank you so much. And I want to thank FIDA for putting up this wonderful program. We have been looking since COVID. We've looked at issues around violence against women or sexual and gender-based violence. Many groups have looked at it. Service providers have looked at it. What is new? What is the added value? I think the added value in what is happening today is also to begin looking at the root causes and finding practical solution. And it has been, it's a very rich panel, and I was happy that I met the last speaker also talk about a number of issues, bringing in interdisciplinary approach, bringing in psychiatric, bringing in other people to have other perspective on this problem. Yes, we are no longer in doubt whether there is an surge I think is our leave. That could tell you, because one of the things I did this period, especially during the lockdown, was to volunteer to handle one of the hotlines of WACOL. WACOL is Women's Aid Collective, and TAMASAC is Tama Sexual Assault Referral Center. And I founded both organizations. And I volunteered to take calls. So, and I didn't, in fact, I couldn't have anticipated how overwhelming that would be, and how my life have been so consumed that throughout this COVID, I've not even had more than 4 hours sleep a day. For example, between April and June 30th at WACOL, we handled 227 cases of sexual and gender-based violence. And I tell you the breakdown. For example, rape, defilement, and incest was 26. Denial of inheritance, harmful practices, 5. Physical and emotional assaults, abuses, including battery, 97. Trafficking, child trafficking, 2. Early and forced marriage, 2. Forceful ejection and abandonment, 24. Discrimination on grounds of sex, 3. Custody and maintenance matter, 56. A total of, in April, we had 81 cases. In May, we had 74, and in June, 72. Total of 227. And I'm talking about, remember, it's a lockdown, so there are a lot of things that affect accessibility. We had also digitally enabled services, but we're talking about not cases that were just referred, or these are cases that were actually handled, that we followed up, that came to us, and that we are working on. We must have received more than 500 calls, but these are the actual cases that we worked on. So one start wondering, and for all the reasons I wouldn't repeat, because I know a lot of people are lined up to speak what the psychiatrist has said in terms of the stress that happened during the lockdown, and the fact that people agitated is something disruptive. Nobody knew it will happen. And then within that, of course, people have different ways of expressing frustration. It could be part of it, but I don't think it gives even actually a picture of it, because we can try to, there is a problem or something that we have to avoid, falling into when you talk about domestic violence and you begin to look at the root causes. We should separate things that through socialization have become normalized, that especially when it comes to expression of power and violence. We can, of course, make excuse if a mad person, somebody who is mentally deranged or openly mad, begin to exhibit violence act. People can say this person is mad, that's why he or she is behaving this way. So that violence expression is because of the mental health of the person. So that's acceptable. And if somebody is on drugs, and you can say, oh, he's under influence. Even in law, we know that in terms of defenses, that we can say insanity, even though it will not absorb, but it can mitigate the hardship or suspend. You may be guilty, but say guilty, but on ground of insanity, of course. And then there are different things. So we know that those can be root causes, and some people are actually on drugs. Alcohol can also influence violence. These are traditionally known root causes. And in that looking at root causes, which are the fundamental problem, is about how the society construe and treat the female gender. It's about social norms. It's about patriarchy and patriarchal system. It's about the conceptualization of the private public space dichotomy. Is about a woman's role. How is it conceived? Is it conceived as being reproductive or productive? And then when you tend to cross over to what is not socially determined, then you already, that will incur the wrath of people, whether it's your husband or father or other siblings. The other day we had a young lady beaten up by the brother, so she was so injured. And then you wonder what was her offense. She didn't cook. Of course, she's female. I don't think she will have beaten up even any man like that. So because she's seated there, he's seated, and then he thinks that her role is cooking. And then the mother is watching, and then she suffers this type of harm. So if, for example, and women have also even internalized this conceptualized role of what a good woman, in quotes, should be, for you to be a good woman. So, and if you're not a good woman, then you cost the violence that has been visited upon you. So the society have even come to accept this, and that is where we have a problem. That in addressing those root causes, we'll have to look at what are the drivers, what are the push and pull factors. The drivers include gender discrimination, it includes inequalities, and it includes the social norms, sex stereotypes that have permeated every sphere of life. How is a woman seen as a full citizen in a democratic state, Nigeria, in a constitutional democracy we run? If they are, how come that we have the representation of women we have? The percent is less than 10. How come that they are not big players or gladiators, political gladiators? How come they are not the gladiators when it comes to business? How come that? So the society itself treats a woman and the girl child as a mini person. And it takes 9 lives to survive womanhood, being a woman. You're lucky if you survive not being aborted because you're a female, and there are texts that proves that. And then if you're born, you're lucky if you're not rejected because you're a woman at birth, and then someone abandons paying hospital bill, or even they are buried alive, as we know in some countries. If they survive that, what about female circumcision? What about female genital mutilation? If they pass that, what about early marriage? Would they come the early and forced marriage? And if they get into that, and then they get into the marriage, then the battery continues, and then they will have children. They're not able to even have reproductive self-determination. And it goes on and on. So it follows them from cradle to grave. And after that, so it is so deeply rooted in the society that we have. And I believe it's all part of the gendered nature of even domestic violence. Everybody's in agreement that it disproportionately affects women, just like when you look at the issue of trafficking. And so it is disproportionately affects women. And it has to also do with their gender and gender construction. And it varies from society to society. Another society can treat a woman better because it's cultural things. They are determined by culture, by environmental determinants. And there is also the one that when people watch, and when children watch their mothers being beaten, and then over time, either some of them will like violence, some of them will detest violence completely, and some will grow up to continue that cycle of violence. So what we do with these institutions that continue to reinforce and reproduce this kind of stereotypes that leads to violence against women and girls. That's what we have to tackle. And I'm telling you, even though culture is not static, when it comes to the culture of violence, it is like rigid. It's like becoming, it's no longer fluid. It's no longer something you say, it changes with the people. So if you look at cultures that women have suffered widowhood practices, for example, it is still there. The disinheritance of widows is still there. Despite the constitutional provisions that prohibit discrimination, the reality, the de facto, is different from de jure. And why is there a gulf between de jure and de facto? And that's where you come to this, that yes, we need to address the root causes. And part of it is part of the work civil society have been doing. When I look at the cases, and there are new forms of violence that are also emerging, some because of the cyberspace that people use, some also, and then it's increasing, and we have all dimensions modeled up with the traditional violence against women. So are we fighting it as the law is trying to catch up with criminalization of certain cyber, like whether cyber sex, whether cyber stalking, and all those cyber bullying? They're trying to do that. These are new phenomena. And there are also the traditional ones that nobody is talking about. If a woman, for example, so when a woman is in fact, there are so many proverbs that describes that a woman should be seen, it should be not heard. And then, of course, if you try to be heard, that means you're trying to force yourself in a space where you're not supposed to be, or where they don't think you belong. You shouldn't be in the public space. What are you doing out there? We had a rape case once. The father wanted it. The girl got raped, and she was 17. And the anger of the father in trying to withdraw the case was that what was she doing there in that boy's house? And they were their schoolmates. And then she called and said, we needed this. And then she innocently went. She didn't know that she would be gang raped. But then because of those prejudice, because of those things, he ought to be cooking in the house. What were you doing there? The same way, if anybody who is raped, why were you wearing that mini skirt? You people are the ones showing all the cleavages. And I tell you, we've seen 3-month-old babies raped. At Tama sexual assault referral, we receive cases of incest, a father even assaulting, sexually assaulting three minors, children that are minors. We just had a case that was exposed of a pastor who forced the daughter to have abortion 3 times, had been sleeping with her. So it's not about what you're wearing, but people justify it. So can we now say that indecent dressing is at the root causes of violence against women or domestic violence? I would say no. And these are places where you have to make the fine distinction and be careful about what we send and about messages we send. Because I've seen this even from some women who want to call themselves even activists and who are also in a position of authority. They always we had one case recently and they said, oh no, your husband is begging you now, you have to accept it. After all, a man is not supposed to beg a woman. Meanwhile, this is the man who has battered the wife. And you feel that he will just turn around and say, please forgive me. And then other women, they want you to forgive him because according to culture, a man is not supposed to beg. And if the man shows some crocodile tears, oh no, this must be a nice man. And everybody is pressurizing her, not knowing what she goes through. They wouldn't even let you make decision for yourself. So these are the problem. The problem also includes even women. You hear about the Umuada in Igbo land. So it's no longer just that the men are the perpetrators of violence. It's not just like black and white or, it's also that women are part of that system. And how come? Because also they've conceptualized their role as custodian of culture. And they have been arrogated some power by that patriarchal system. And they feel empowered and emboldened to begin to do the same thing on their fellow women. Please, what about the housemaid, house help phenomenon? That's a big domestic violence. Who perpetrates that? You find that 95% of the cases, if I don't say 99, are perpetrated by women. And it's for the psychiatrists to tell us. Is it because that women are themselves oppressed, violated, abused, that they turn around to abuse their housemaid? Or is it because of insecurity? Because as the UN Special Rapporteur, I go to certain countries in Gulf State, they won't even allow the maid, they call it the maid, and these people are foreigners, they bring from even Filipinos, people from Africa and so many places. They will say, no, you can't take your shower for 2 months. The woman will be eating from the toilet. I once was doing a mission in Philippines and I received over about 46 domestic workers that returned from Gulf State. And if they talk about horrendous abuses they suffered at the hands of their madam. By the way, the majority, those who traffic people are also women. So what is at the root causes of this? Why then are also women and the female gender part of this? This may require more than this, but I just think what we are doing today is a useful beginning. It will be very important to do even further research on this issue of root causes. It will be very important to begin to follow up certain cases that will explain, that will enable us to understand the mindset of the perpetrators. Because as we're talking about the root causes, maybe a perpetrator ought to also be part of the audience, not just a victim. A perpetrator who can tell us what is in their mind. Because for some, you didn't get my food early. Oh, it's your role. They don't care whether you're sick or ill. In fact, I had one woman who gave birth a day after she was cooking in the kitchen. And the man traveled and they were in the United States of America. And they traveled there to have a baby. But the man said, you have to make my meal. And she was frying plantain. And when she told me, and I said, you know, with the dizziness a woman feels after giving birth, you could have just, you could just burn yourself and even faint and die. But because the man already feels that it's her place to be that cook, and it just doesn't matter. If we have a system where we don't have help, then you do your work. So we need to really revisit, have a very robust discussion around this. It's a discussion whose time has come. And this is just the beginning. And I know we can go on and talk about this. And I want to just end by saying, we know we have epidemic upon this pandemic. We know people can come up with any justification. These are becoming myths. Oh, my food was not ready. Oh, she's very saucy. Oh, she doesn't respect me. Because finally, in the one case I'm talking about, how did I know about the case? Then the man said, oh, after 3 months, she had given birth. He said, you will return back to your parents. You're not respecting me enough. Oh, she's not respecting me. She talks back at me. So were women ever raised or men ever raised to see women as partners or their equals? The answer will be no. So we advise people, even in this COVID time, please engage yourself, avoid altercation, walk away from places and in the face of provocation, keep away from all dangerous objects and domestic appliances, report and present cases use hotlines, try to hide yourself, lock yourself in a room, don't respond, don't do this, don't do that. But what about the law itself? Our law is not fair on a woman. I'm a professor of law and I teach also criminal law. Take the defense of provocation, for example. That defense does not work for a woman. Even a woman who has suffered battery, a battered woman syndrome is been taken in some jurisdiction. They take evidence around that, including how they will react. And when women commit homicide, it could be the tipping point, could be just a little thing, because women don't respond to anger the same way men do. And many men have killed their wives because they say they caught them in compromising situation or they caught them having sex with another. A woman may not react in that way. And the man will be completely, of course, provocation when it appears at the peak of, say, oh, he did that at the peak of crisis. It becomes a sustainable defense for them. But a woman's anger doesn't work the same way. She will have been emotionally battered over time. Before she would do, it will just be like a glass. A little tip, we just trip it and trigger it to the point that she can react. And then something happens and everybody turn around to blame her. And nobody wants to understand the psychology or what has happened. What about the rape itself? A woman is seen as a liar. It depends on your status. To even be believed that you're telling this, what you're saying is correct and you don't want to damage that man. Oh, that guy is a musician. He's a top one going. Some people have hired you to come and blackmail him. We've seen that even in civilized society. Why must it be that? A judge said in Canada in one case, he said, look, it depends on who you are. In order to accuse another of rape to be believed. If I'm a professor of law and say that this person have say, oh, that woman, she's a professor, no, she's likely to have suffered that. Another person come and accuse the president of a country, then nobody, nobody. They will even tell you, are you not lucky if the president had even approached you or forced sex on you? I mean, so it has to, in bottom line is that there is a lot that our culture have to do with this and social norms. Yes, you can tell people to refrain from exchange of word or from arguing in the heat of passion or provocation and to walk away from all those places. And it's always about a woman, a woman, a woman. Be responsible, train your children well. Oh, that woman did not bring up the children well. Everything. But it takes two. And men must take responsibility. And including the perpetrators of violence, they must be held accountable. It must be zero tolerance and no justification for violence, except when people have to because of their mental state. Even drug, if you are the one who have just taken the drug yourself, it shouldn't exonerate you anyway. That's why they say guilty, but on ground of insanity, the conviction, you may be sentenced to an institution. It doesn't exonerate the person. So we just have to continue this conversation. That's what I want to end with, and to commend FIDA and to say our job is far from being done. And in this, our environment, there is huge, huge, huge problem. And every day we are just swarmed with these cases and we're wondering, when do we see an end to this? When do we begin to have a responsive system that can deal with this in a way that can inspire confidence and give us hope that I'm getting tired. I've done this work for nearly 3 decades. I can't live my life like this, at 12 midnight every day. And it's because systems are not working. If 4 policemen were sent to a woman to rescue a woman, and what did they go there to do? They saw the husband beating her right in front of them. The woman is screaming for their attention. And they asked the woman. The woman said the man is forcing sex on me and she has injured me. She's now an incontinent. And what did they say? They said that's why he married you. And then she told them she has forced me to do abortion 7 times. They said it's called unwanted pregnancy. And you're talking about police officers. And it's not the first time. So where do we start? Because their mindset is patriarchal system. They've internalized it. So for you, whatever you're talking about, they even blamed her. Why did you take to Facebook? So why did you tell the world what you're suffering? So she must die in silence. So it's only because now people are breaking the silence. And that's why we're talking about this. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'll stop here. And I'm sorry I've taken more time than I thought I would take.
Wow, thank you so much, Prof. Prof. Joy Ezelo, our learned Dean of Law, University of Nigeria. Thank you so much for your thought-provoking presentation. I mean, it's as if you should actually go on because you've raised so many pertinent issues. You've asked us so many questions, and we need to just keep interrogating our thoughts. We need to keep challenging all those social norms and the culture that are so barbaric, and and you have been able to just take us through even your own personal experiences during this pandemic with your work with the beautiful organization that you serve with, the WACO and the TAMA. It's so heartwarming that we all have our hands on the table working so hard to continue with this conversation. Thank you so much, Ma. I will make a little attempt again just to bring out some of the high points of your presentation and your thought-provoking, speech to us. We're looking at the root causes and, of course, determining that we need to find creative solutions. We're not just going to be talking about it, but we also need to begin to look at creative solutions to this problem because it is what it is. It's a pandemic on its own. So you have challenged us, you've charged us this evening. And of course, you've spoken from your experience during this pandemic that you've had to treat over 200 cases. This is like comparing the records even with FIDA Lagos, for instance. So it's really enormous. The work is a lot, and we need to just keep up with this. We must speak out, because there are so many pertinent questions, because a woman is seen. How is a woman seen? Is a woman seen as a full citizen? We need to challenge the status quo. We need to challenge all those social norms and the obnoxious cultural practices. And you asked us again that we need to look at all those ways that we have been living, the ways of life. We need to ask those pertinent questions on our own way of life. Why are women harming women? Why are women at the center of human trafficking? Why are women at the center of domestic violence against housemaids and housekeepers and those people who will feel they are underprivileged? And then why are we the one also perpetrating that? You've called for further research as well as for us to look at how we can do aggressive follow-up of some of the cases that we have seen in order for us to unravel the root causes of some of these cases. You have called that, yes, we must continue to preach that it must be zero tolerance for domestic violence and sexual assaults. And then you've charged us that this conversation is not ending here. This is not another talk shop. The conversation must continue. We thank you so much, Prof. We're really glad to have you. Thank you so much, Ma. Now, we'll quickly move on to call Mrs. Titilola Vivo Adeni. You're welcome, Ma. Titilola Vivo Adeni has been waiting as well. Mrs. Adeni, are you there? We're ready to take you on board now. Thank you. I think Mrs. Adeni is having some technical problems. If you can hear me, Mrs. Adeni, can you please type, just let know what's going on with you in the chat box. Okay, I can't get through to her. We're going to keep trying. But at this juncture, let me just bring in our honorable justices for them to give us their brief remarks. I don't know if our grand patron is here. Honorable Justice Jumoke Pedro. My Lord, I don't know if you're here. I have been looking for you. If you're here, can you please signify, raise your hand, drop us a chat? I've actually been looking for you because I can see my Lord, Honorable Justice Sherifat Sholebo. Okay, let me call on my Honorable Justice Sherifat Sholebo for our own remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
I adopted the protocol already laid down. I especially acknowledge the presence of the First Lady, Dr. Mrs. Sanwo-Olu. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
hello?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am, we
Yes,
can hear
I
you.
especially will acknowledge the presence of the Dr. Sanwo-Olu, Dr. Mrs. Ibijoke Sanwo-Olu at this program. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Prof and Dr. Sheikh had said so much, and they have raised so many issues. And like Dr. Sheikh actually ended, what do we do now? I believe we just must look at how to some extent, prevent the occurrence or the happenings of these sexual offenses. Sexually offense or violence had been explained or defined by Dr. Sheikh very clearly, and Lagos State law, the protection against domestic violence law of Lagos State is very, very clear on domestic violence. What exactly is domestic violence? It is between persons involved in domestic relationship. Domestic relationship may not be spousal. It could also be even between friends sharing residence. So it could happen for, not necessarily within the house, but majorly within the house. And that's why it goes beyond husband and wife, parents and children. It could also be between employers, as this, the owners of the house, and their employees, which in most cases are probably the cooks, the maids, and all that. But from the issues identified, I think if I remember clearly, Prof said something about women. Why are women injuring ourselves? From practical experiences, what I have found out is that I think she also raised the issue of lack of security. Most times we lack confidence. We are economically dependent on our spouses. So that also could explain why we injure ourselves. We are built up so much anger. And of course, who can we inflict it on? Those who are less privileged or disadvantaged to us. Mostly our children, our mates, and of course, maybe some other friends or co-occupiers. With regards to trafficking, what I've also realized is that women are those that are trafficked. And from what I've seen in a lot of films in recent times, because of this pandemic, I realized that once they are trafficked, after they have paid off their fees or whatever charges, they graduate to being, in quotes, employers of labor, of sex workers. So that also explains that is basically, that question could be answered with the fact that it is a matter of previous experiences. whatever we experience while growing up or in relationships affects us, and of course explains the way we behave. And I want to quickly add something to this issue of previous experiences. I had a case in court. A young man was arrested somewhere at Ikotu garage for rape. Of course, he came to court and admitted he raped a particular young boy. And I asked him why. He explained to me that while growing up somewhere in Asaba, the father was a driver. So he lived in the premises of the father's employees. And at the end of the day, the next door neighbor, who was a cook, would usually give him food to eat. And after a while would invite him in. And what was he doing to him? The man, or they usually would have anal sex with him. So that, according to him, he told me he never knew it was wrong. He knew at a point the father got to know. That was why he was sent to Lagos. He had nowhere to stay. And of course, he became a conductor to Danfo drivers. And at the end of the close of day, he would sleep at the garage in any available Danfo, whatever that was available. Because he was used to regular sex through the anus, he would look for a small boy, give 200 maximum according to 500, and say, come and take money to eat. Invite them inside the Danfo, and of course, rape them. He never knew it's called rape, because that was what he experienced at a very tender age while growing up in Asaba. Until his arrest, according to him, he never knew. Of course, he ended up in jail. With regards to even domestic violence, I had also a case of a pregnant lady who got newly married, came to the court to complain. And when I issued interim protection order, she told me she didn't want it served. I said, why? Said, oh, my father-in-law is a bully. When he speaks, my mother-in-law dare not speak. My father is dead, and my mother is so scared of him that he will not say anything. I wonder who the person could be. Of course, he's a man of military background. That does not explain it. That's not that I'm saying that all military men are actually bullies, but this explains why the husband turned out the way he was. The young man could not understand why his wife would talk back. And that was always a cause of their problem. Unfortunately, the wife grew up in a house where when the father speaks, sought the mother's opinion. So these are contradictions in their upbringing. So with all this, and from practical experience, another thing is that I think it has also been pointed out by the two speakers, the issue of cultural beliefs, traditional, social, and religious beliefs. I am a Muslim, and I'm glad we have a Islamic spiritual father here. There's a misconception about a provision in the Quran that says that a man can discipline the wife. I understood what it says, but I don't want to interpret it. I would want the imam to try and explain that. A lot of times, a lot of Muslim men try to beat up their wife because they believe erroneously that they are enjoined to discipline their wife by beating when they misbehave. That I can say about religious belief. About cultural, like has been pointed out by the psychiatrists, it's difficult in a male-dominated society for a lot of our men to understand why you will refuse sex, or when they talk, you talk back, or you cannot follow simple instruction. Basically, it's because they are used to dominating, they are used to being listened to, and they are used to girls carrying out their instruction without any questioning. And that's also a problem. And that also explains why we have some local leaders like Bales. I have had cases from areas like Ekpotu, Baja, where the leaders, the community leader, I think they call them Bale, would ask the woman, for going to report to the society, to the police, leave this community. I have had cases of policemen years back, although that's about 10 years back before the Child Rights Law. I don't know now what the situation is. We have male policemen. Cases will be reported at the station, and at the end of the day, the male officers will keep the girls behind the counter. And very late at night, will now say, come and do oral sex or come and do regular sex. And when the girls report back to the court, the excuse is that the man said, what is the big deal? After all, your hymen have been broken. Job has to be. Let's do what we have to do. And in some cases, the officers actually have their way. And that also affects the issue of reportage. You live in a community, you don't have money to relocate, and you know that your bailiff had said, oh, they have begged you, accept the apology and move on. Or you go to the police station and they say, give us money, mobilize us, and you don't have money to mobilize officers, and nothing will be done. You go back to the society, the community where you have been humiliated, only to now be bold that go turn there. Where, what did you come back with? Because the officers will not move unless they are mobilized. These are some of the problems that are affecting this, in quote, pandemic, because rape is getting worldwide. It is pandemic, and honestly, it is a very serious issue. With this pandemic, COVID-19, there no doubt there's upsurge in domestic violence between couples, between parents. Of course, that has to do with poverty. If you look at the statistics of those who are reporting, it's not between the middle class or the upper class. It's between the lower classes of persons. And it's because they have no money, no income, no food at all. The man has not been making money. The woman too has no money. And part of the problem is that they rarely stay together at home during the daytime. So they are not used to living together. So it is strange to them, all of them being inside, talking at the same time. And apart from that, part of the problems with this class of persons is also the fact that there's even no light. Electricity is not working. I have been on generator for 48 hours. So you cannot imagine if there's no money to buy fuel, what happens? And that's the experience of people within this class. No generator, no television, no light, no food, no water. And to make matter worse, at this period, the rains are here. There's also flooding. So there are too many reasons for people to be irritated, highly irritated. And of course, that explains the aggression, even within the families. So poverty has to do with it. And with due respect, government not being alive to their responsibilities is also part of the problem. Also, the doctor, I think, raised the issue of mentally deranged lady or person who killed the baby. It is a pity, but I'm sure once it gets to court, the lawyer will raise the issue of the defense of insanity, and of course the law will take its course. The prof also raised the issue of defense of provocation. With due respect, Prof, I don't think there is any discrimination when it comes to provocation. The law has to be interpreted fairly. In the criminal law, there's no division between genders, whether this would avail male person or not. And of course, by virtue of Section 42 of the Constitution, I don't think a judge would look at such defense and start ascribing whether you are male or female. It would have to be applied generally across the board. I also support the submission on the issue of dressing. Dressing has nothing to do with this particular myth going on. Oh, it's because she wore spaghetti or sleeveless or mini. When we were young, up till age 18, 19, I wore mini. We even used to call one micro mini. Nobody abused us. Nobody accosted us. Nobody bullied us. In this Lagos, we will walk from our homes straight to Marina. There used to be ports by that Marina in Lagos State. And there were benches. And we would stay there, enjoy our time with our friends, and go back home. Even we go picnicking. love garden or things like that. But I don't know. I wasn't aware of what they call rape at that time. But I think as we progress, maybe like the believers will say, we're approaching end time, things are getting worse. How do you explain the rape of a 2-month-old baby? I had sat over the case of a 2-month-old, few days baby that was penetrated by a man who was supposed to be an uncle. The man went to visit the family, and the woman just said, "Uncle, let me get to the kitchen and get you something to eat." All she heard was this scream, a terrible scream from the child, ran out of the kitchen and found blood on her daughter. At the time they presented the child in court, the anus had been pierced, sorry, the vagina had passed through the, I don't know what they call it, the area of the anus, like you have this VVF. I don't know what became of the child because I was posted out after I took the arraignment of the man. So I have series of cases of 7, 8-year-old girls who were repeatedly raped by one man or the other at different times and regularly too. These are girls who had just nothing on their chest beyond nipples. They have no shape. With all humility, please. Some of them are not even beautiful. So I honestly could not understand the attraction. And like the prof said, we need to investigate. Ask these pedophiles, ask the rapists, why do you do what you are doing? The researchers need to do that. Because a lot of times I have a headache when I handle children. And I found out that this is the situation. Anyway, so there's so much to say in response to some of the things that have been said, but no doubt the issue of power, dominance has to do with the situation. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, my Lord. We're so grateful. I mean, this perspective is just making it more interesting as to how we can key into this conversation and what we can do, one person at a time. Thank you so much for those great insights and the practical examples you've given. There's so much work to do, Ma. Thank you for the charge. We're grateful. Thank you, Ma.